This video is going to show you how to use acrylic paint in order to paint a color wheel. So in order to start, you're going to want a paper towel, cup of water, a paint palette with the primary colors black and white, a paintbrush, and then your color wheel that you'll be painting. Make sure you write your first and last name on it. And then I like to go through and label each section where you need to put your colors. I start with the primary, so red, yellow, and blue. And then I go in and I add the secondary colors of orange, green, and purple in order so that way I am less likely to screw up on where each section needs to be. Now starting out, I like to just pick my primary color and I like to mix all my paint on my paper. You're going to find out what works out best for you, but that is what I like to do best. So I put a nice solid layer of that primary color in this section over the entire thing, and then my outer ring I am putting as my shades, so I add just a little bit of black just to that and I mix that in, and then in my tint area I add just a little bit of white, and I can always build that up, but you want to make sure you're working quickly because if the paint dries or if you have it too thin, it's not going to mix very well. So not that you need to glob it on, but you need to make sure that you are pacing it out so that it's a nice, even, solid color so that the paints can mix together and have a nice, even look to it. As you can see, I repeat this process with my red, my yellow, and my blue. I want to start with those primary colors so then I know that I have my spacing correct. Doesn't matter if you start with your shade or your tint. As you can kind of see, I kind of switch it up. It's kind of whatever I'm feeling, but you need to make sure that you're washing your brush out in between each use. If you're having a tint in your brush and you add the black, then you're now going to have a tone and it's not going to look correct. All right, so I always rinse it off, make sure you're kind of pressing it into the bottom, brush it off on the side so you have less water in your brush, and then I always kind of squeegee it out using my paper towel. That way it gets any remaining color and it gets out excess water. After you have finished your primary colors, then you can start working on your secondary and your intermediate or tertiary colors. So you can see that I am starting out with this red-orange. All right, and so when you are doing that, I start with red, but I add just a little bit of yellow. So I am mixing this on my paint palette. Once again, you can mix this on your paper if that is preferable. And then in order to make orange, I just add a little bit more yellow. And then for yellow-orange, it's even more yellow. So basically, you need to make sure that you're having distinct colors between those areas. I noticed that I had forgotten to add enough of a tint, and so I need to make sure that that color matches my orange. It can't look yellow orange, it can't look red orange, it needs to look orange. And so you need to make sure that your tint, your pure color, and your shade all look like the same color. This is why I like to paint the entire section with that base and then add the tint and the shade. That's been the easiest way I have found for making sure that those colors match. Another thing that you can do is paint your primaries, then paint your secondaries, and then go back in and add in your tertiary and intermediate. Some people start with red, go to red-orange, go to orange, go to yellow-orange, and just kind of keep building. It's really kind of up to you. Now, if you do need to stop, which most of you will have to, put your paper onto the drying rack, and then you're going to cover your paint with saran wrap. But you can see that I'm gently touching the saran wrap to that paint. If it's not touching the paint, your paint is going to dry out. All right, and then put your name on it so that you know that it's yours and nobody else can take it. And then it is time to clean up. So I always start by rinsing out my paint cup and returning it to where I found it. And then for your paintbrush, you need to make sure that you're rinsing out any excess paint. Then you're swishing it around in soap. Make sure you're pressing it into the palm of your hand. And then you rinse it out again. And then you want to test and make sure that there's no color in it by using a paper towel. That also helps dry it off a little bit extra, but if you have any paints, then you need to repeat. Make sure you're putting them in bristles side up back into their cup, and then you are good to go. So now it's time to continue working on your projects. And so starting back up, you want to make sure that you're reusing your plastic wrap. And so I always peel it up, carefully put it next to you so you can reuse it at the end of the day. And then you just continue using your paint as you were yesterday. Now, one thing you'll notice is that in your violet section particularly, creating those shades ends up being kind of difficult, and that's just because they're really dark colors already, so it's not the end of the world if you end up having a very difficult color to work with. It's okay, just do your best. So one thing you'll notice here is that I started in my yellow green section, and that's actually because I meant to put yellow green in my blue green section on accident. So I was able to add enough blue so you can't tell that I had screwed up on that. But if you do ever screw up, you have the option to either try to paint over it if you haven't painted a lot, or if it's this similar color scheme. Otherwise, you just let it dry and then you paint over it, and you'll be actually seeing me do that later on. Now, you can see I'm getting some more yellow here. Yellow is one of those colors that we end up going through quite a bit of. It's just such a light color that it takes a lot of yellow to make green, and very, very little blue. So that is something that is a regular happening. So if you need more, just come up and get it. But make sure that you are only getting a small amount at a time. So you can see here that this is where I actually am covering up my violet because it is dried, and so I wanted to fix it so it was actually correct. It was too close to blue violet, so I'm painting over it with a little bit more of a violet color, and so it should be more distinct of red violet, violet, and blue violet. So now it's time for your complementary and neutral colors. All right, complementary colors are what you are going to be using to create your neutral color in the center. So what I start with is getting yellow and then mixing it into being an orange, and then the opposite of orange is blue, so I add in some blue. Now, as I'm mixing this, I am seeing that it's turning a little green. So if I see that it's a green touch, then I just add the opposite of green, which is red. If I am seeing that it is looking a little bit more on the purple side, then I'm going to add more yellow, and so on and so forth. And if you're adding just a little bit of an opposite color, it should get to be a neutral brownish color. All right, so now you're going to be doing these complementary squares. So you can see that I painted green around the one, and the opposite of green is red. So I paint red on the inside. So you can either do both of the exterior boxes and then let them dry and then paint the inside, but you just need to make sure that I can see that you have the correct colors. So I let my orange dry a little bit more, and it's a little bit easier to paint that blue in there. So you just need to have the two boxes. But these are the three most common combinations. So green and red, orange and blue, purple and yellow, or violet and yellow. All right, so when you are finished, you should have all of your colors. It should all be distinct. You should have neutral in the middle, tints on one ring, shades in another ring, and the piers need to be in the middle. And then you should have two sets of complementary colors with your name on it, and you are good to go. So once you are finished with your little mini project here, your color wheel, you are going to want to make sure that you rinse off any excess paint, clean up that paint palette. You don't want the paint to dry on there. Sometimes I like to use my brush here. It just kind of helps get the paint off a little bit faster. At least that's what I found. It actually kind of helps clean your brush in the process too, so it makes that process a little bit easier later on too. Make sure that you're getting all the paint off the bottom of the sink too, because that is a pain to clean up if it dries on there. So it's easier when you are just doing this right away. All in all, work efficiently, work smart, work carefully, and just have patience with this. Best of luck.